Welcome to Adventure CEO Leadership Insights, your continuing conversation with entrepreneurs and other modern day adventurers that are sharing their quest to continually expand opportunities for their families, their teams, and the communities they serve. I'm Jeffrey Wolf, your host. I'm glad you're part of the conversation. Grab something to write with and take notes. You're going to love our upcoming guests. Our next guest is Laurel Rolls, CEO of Laurel Rolls and Associates, a professional and executive coaching firm. Her dedication to her clients is to inspire possibilities and break down the barriers and blocks of limiting belief systems and behaviors. Laura is an accomplished speaker, facilitator, consultant, and coach. She comes to us from a full career of Fortune 200 executive positions, a partner with Delloitte-Touche, and as a vice president with an innovative consulting firm. Laurel, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Jeff. Thank you for inviting me.
It's an honor to have you, and here's why. I want to dive right in to really a big question. And as you're watching this, pay attention right now. You don't want to miss this. Laurel, you were the second woman to achieve partner level with one of the big four consulting and accounting firms, Deloitte, which is now Deloitte-Touche, as we would know. Could you share with us what that experience was like? I mean, that must have been incredible.
Yeah. Yes, and it was at a time when discrimination was high. I was called into the partner in charge's office, and he said, "Laurel, I understand you want to become partner." "Why, Fred?" "Yes, I do." And he said, "Well, you've got two things going against you." And I said, "Oh, Fred, well, tell me what those are." "You're a female and you're young." And I just chuckled and I said, "Fred, it's a good thing I'm sitting here because someone else could sue you for those comments." I had to stop that attitude and behavior in its tracks.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it kindly. And of course, that was the end of the meeting. 2 years later, I was partner.
2 years later, you'd achieved partner.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
As a woman, and the average age in consulting at the time was 42 and I was 36. So I beat both
Wow.
of them. Now, did I have the mindset of, age and gender and so on? I really didn't. I had the mindset of do the job and do it well and do it better. And yes, you as a woman have to work harder to do that. So be it. It's the game. If you sold the kinds of projects I did, which actually was what propelled me into partnership, I sold the single largest contract consulting had ever seen.
Wow.
It was an 8-figure contract. And that was after bailing out a failing project. I bailed it out so well that they gave me the sole source contract to the tune of 8 figures.
From the same client?
Yes.
Wow. Congratulations. That's just it's amazing that would have that impact with the client.
Well, guess what? They couldn't ignore me.
Now, just for some context, as partner, how big of a span of control did you have within the organization?
So the span of control there was I had hundreds of people working on the project coming in from offices all over the country. They didn't even report directly to me. They were coming from other offices.
Wow.
And I was housing them and all kinds of things. So span of control is relative to area of responsibility, how the practice is run. Same as in corporations.
Mm-hmm.
You could have small regional offices, and then you have somebody in corporate office that's responsible for all the regional offices. And the way you manage that is different. Let me tell you, trying to manage somebody who actually reports to somebody else over here in another office is a bigger challenge than trying to manage somebody that works within your own office.
How did that shift your thinking about your role as a leader?
It really forced me to step up out of the detail fray. I couldn't get down into the detail. I had to trust. Now, I have the skill and the perspective to dive down into the detail, look around, smell, feel what's going on there, and come to conclusions about where the problems might be. I have a real strong skill in being able to do that. I don't stay there. I'm back up. And then give more direction or ideas and thoughtfulness and allow the team to actually then go forward. I don't stay in the detail very long. I don't micromanage. Have to understand what's going on well enough that I know if we're still steering toward that outcome that I want.
Well, that would be like running a mid-sized company, really. A lot of small businesses aren't as large as that project.
That's true. That's true.
And they have the
So,
benefit of usually local people as opposed to people from all over the country, different organizations.
so for me to get into the stuff of the project was a fool's errand. I needed to step up and say, okay, what are all these competing pressures? What's going to get us to the end game? How do I need to energize? How do I need to instill ownership and growth and build the teams? And how do I keep the bears at bay? That's really at that level of a project. That's the responsibility. As a partner, my responsibilities shifted dramatically from execution to go find the business.
Mm-hmm.
So as a partner now, you're responsible for killing everything and then building the teams in order to, eat what you killed. Well, and there was another lesson I learned from that one. Remember, it was still in the days of discrimination, and these
Okay.
companies didn't yet know what to do with women in that position.
Mm-hmm.
There were few and far between. So there'd never been any thought of how now do we integrate the different thinking patterns. Women think differently than men do. And you know what? That's really great. So how do we then bring those together so there's greater strength in the combination instead of competition and rejection and judgment? So a good CEO is really going to look at those factors as well in blending their team and create different behavior patterns within their team. And it was very interesting because I had accomplished so much that I actually was told, Laurel, you don't need any help, you can do it.
Wow.
If you couldn't see my eyes crossing, they still cross today when I think about that, because I can't take on that massive a project without support. So the lesson I learned, I said, oh, okay, I'm glad you have all this confidence, and I'll just dig deep and find the resources within myself. And that was probably one of the biggest errors that I made. Right?
One of the biggest errors that you made.
Right. So I'm telling on myself again. But it's important to understand. It's great to have the confidence, but know yourself well enough to know where are the missing pieces. We all have them. And so how am I going to fill those holes?
Laurel delivered a huge surprise with her amazing story about being the first woman programmer for Procter and Gamble.
And I was the first female computer operator at Procter and Gamble in downtown Cincinnati.
No kidding.
I was exactly what they were looking for, because they were trying to step up to the whole issue of EEOC and women being able to work in a computing center. Back in the days when it's these big rooms, disk drives were this big, and you had to carry them around. You carried around stacks of mag tapes this high. You had to get these big boxes of paper off the top shelf, load them into the printers, the continuous paper, and heaven forbid, get your fingers dirty by putting ink into the printer. After 3 weeks, the 3 guys stood around me and they literally went, we can now help you, is what they said to me. And I went, what are you talking about? And they said they were told they were not allowed to help me.
Really?
So that's when I found out I was an experiment. And then the next summer they said, okay, will a man work for a woman in the data center? So rather than being the computer operator, I was now supervisor. I had no concept that I wasn't equal to them at that stage. Had no concept of it. I learned that later. And
Now,
then
at that point in your life, did you ever imagine that your career path would lead to being partner at
oh heavens,
Deloitte?
I didn't know what that was. I had no vision, concept, or anything about what the business world was. I was following what appealed to me.
So what do you find as the top 3 challenges that CEOs are confronted with today?
The teaming, creating discrete teams that have a distinct sense of purpose and that are coached around trust and co-creation. Most teams, when they come together, they don't come together with that all naturally baked in.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes some time to get them to that level. That's a huge issue because you've got to rely on different teams. It's complicated for CEOs because there is so much outsourcing or there's so much contracting. So you have employees plus contractors is not always a good mix, and it makes it harder to even create that trust. The second is it depends on their industry. If they're in a volatile industry, then whether it's Wall Street, whether it's competition, whether it's regulation, whether it's the general financial markets, if there's volatility there, there's going to be distraction.
Yes.
Right? And so we have to have some unit that is really monitoring the volatility and bringing it down to a non-reactive. Here are the facts, here are the options, here are the possibilities, and then analyzing those and taking sometimes you have to make quick decisions. Yes. Make sure that you've got the basis of information so that you know what's going on and you're not in a reactive pattern.
So it's that combination of having core information and being able to quickly pull together access through the people and systems around them, the additional information needed.
That's exactly right. And be able to have that trusted communication that says, okay, here's the pros and the cons, blah, 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 and be able to go through that quickly.
Is that a shift in the role of CEOs and other leaders within companies today?
I think the pace has changed.
Okay.
And we have new issues related to new generations and how they view. So there are some issues that are new and different, and the pace has clearly changed. And so build trusted teams that are built in a way that they now know how to co-create, how to work, how to bring up the good ideas, and set very specific direction. Now you can do that in a co-creative process.
Mm-hmm.
You can even, with contests and so on, engage the whole company, because here's what we know. When everybody who works for that company feels like they have ownership in the end game and they understand the end game, magic happens. Our companies are not in trouble because of the stuff of business. They're in trouble because they aren't attending to the human aspects of the business, which is, in my opinion, the most powerful predictor of where a company is going to go and how it's going to get there.
That is an incredible insight. If you were talking to a group of women that are emerging leaders, like say a 40 under 40 of emerging leaders group, what would your advice or guidance be to them as they're moving on their path into higher levels of leadership and CEO positions?
Be open to developing yourself. Absorb as much as you can. Stay above the fray. And focus on developing others. If I were to distill this down to what are the 3 top things that are important for someone to focus upon in developing their skills and in engineering their path to strong leadership, one of my favorite words is curiosity. When we open ourselves up with curiosity, it now leads us to possibilities, which is my second favorite word. So, being curious and not feeling like you have to have the answer. You have to make the decision yesterday. It's be curious. And when you're curious with others and ask very thoughtful questions, you open them up to curiosity and possibilities. And you open them up now to feeling ownership. They're not just being told what to do. You're engaging them in the process of getting there.
So what I'm hearing is opportunities derive from or shake out from the possibilities that an individual is able to perceive. The possibilities themselves are opened up by their curiosity.
Absolutely.
And it's dependent. The level of the curiosity drives what happens with the next 2.
Yep. And that's putting yourself in flow, opening up with curiosity, And now you can work with your employees and teams and customers, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
and engaging them in creating something bigger than you might have conceived when you're in this focused flow.
Nice.
And number 2 is don't communicate at your markets.
Mm-hmm.
Don't communicate at your employees. Don't communicate at your kids. Learn how to communicate with them. Again, which is another engagement factor. And always be ready to rise above and look at the lay of the land and how things are fitting together, and just change the orchestration a little bit, and then allow the organization to get in tune with that orchestration. And it can be pretty subtle. Massive changes just create confusion, and you'll lose some of your best people that way.
Yeah.
And you'll create great disruption that you may never recover from.
Why do CEOs reach out to coaches and hire coaches?
When I'm asked that question, my answer is, well, it's lonely at the top.
Yes.
So when a CEO says, gee, I'm not sure where to go from here, I just need a stimulus, they don't want to appear like they don't know what they're doing to the board.
Mm-hmm.
They've got people competing for their position. So it's about showing the weakness, because there are predators out there that will take advantage of it. And so a really good place to go is an executive coach who can sit with you and help you to find, because you've got the answers. You have the answers. You know what they are. It's just allowing the space and the time, and having somebody hearing what you may not be hearing yourself, and seeing what you may not be seeing yourself, and starting to peel away those obstacles. And then now I know what I want to do.
Laurel, working as a coach like that, you have a lot going on. You're an author, you're a professional speaker. What are you working on next?
I started taking a look at what does it take to communicate with. And so I'm putting together a program that is all about that. It's understanding all the components of communication, how it comes together. How can you communicate with people for effect, not manipulation? And how do you now get your flow, your energy in control? Because that's the first thing that a human being will detect. It's the energy.
Yes.
And it has linguistics in it, and it has, how you manage your internal energy, and how you create your intention and purpose, and how do you engage others.
Okay.
And I'm also creating a 7-module program, online program.
So where do I go to find out more about that? And as you're watching this, get something to write with ready.
Okay. The best email address for me currently is Laurel, Laurel, at Laurel Rolls, ROLLS.com.
Laurel at laurelrolls.com.
Yes. Write it down. Don't try to say it.
Yes. Laurel, this has just been incredible. I could talk with you for hours about this. And so what you need to do is get in touch with Laurel. We just scratched the surface. So as soon as you're done watching this, reach out. There's so much more to learn. Laurel, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed this a lot.
Our next guest is Deborah Kagan, speaker, author, and mojo recovery specialist with years of practice being a turned-on woman. Deborah created the Rock Your Mojo series of events where she helps you tap into your innate power and connect with your mojo, which is the source of true self-esteem. Deborah, thank you so much for being with us today.
I'm so glad to be with you. Thanks for inviting me.
Before we move on, could you give us one good tip on how to do better or really start to rock our mojo?
Yeah, I think it really has to do with this understanding about who you're being. See, we've been fed a formula for the bulk of our lives, which is to go do stuff. So then you can have stuff and then you can be something. happy, successful, fulfilled, right?
The whole
But
concept
see,
of having arrived.
yeah, and see, the thing is, that's an incorrect formula. The formula, and this is what I've been preaching and teaching for quite a while now, is you actually have to be something first. You have to understand who you are. You have to tap into that life force of yours and really get that wherever you are, there you are. And you affect your entire life. You are the creator of your life. So it's about being something first of your own creation, right? And that you can do so much more powerfully and so much more effectively when you're connected to your mojo. Once you're consciously being something, then you can take inspired action congruent with who you're being, which will in turn give you the results you actually desire.
And it seems there's a lot more power in that.
The thing that I hear the most often is that people are like, number one, I feel more confident. And the fact that I feel more confident, people are responding to me differently, right? So when you connect to your mojo, that is what happens for you. And so therefore, your effectiveness as a leader is going to skyrocket when you have your mojo intimately connected to yourself. Like, you know, people be like, oh, I lost my mojo. Here's the thing.
The running gag in the Austin Powers movies.
Right. And it's like
mojo,
mojo, baby. Yeah, exactly. But the fact of the matter is we never lose our mojo. The truth is it's like a volume dial. Okay.
Okay.
So the volume dial has gone down. It's never lost. It's just a little covered up. It might be on mute. And it's absolutely still there. It's a matter of starting to uncover it so that, again, you can show up powerfully and you can show up really in terms of having the best impact to make a difference in, you know, I mean, we're talking about leadership here and right, being adventurous and a CEO. So, you know, lead with mojo, lead with your own, you know, with your own power and with being the example. I mean, you know, it's the age-old phrase, right? Be the change you want to see in the world.
You've changed your event series, the Rock Your Mojo series. Could you share that with us?
Yeah. So, you know, I have been working for a couple decades now and really supporting women in rocking their mojo. And let's just like pause it for 1 second, just for folks. I mean, I know people have heard the word and they, you know it's a slang word. But, you know, mojo's our life force. And it's that thing that animates us. It's the thing that actually people feel from us before we ever open our mouths. And it's been such a pleasure to support women in this way. But what's been happening over the years is a lot of men have been going, hello, I know we have mojo too. And so what about us? Like, where's the content? Where's the support? Where's the trainings for us? And I said, oh, you know, I'm sure there's some great men's groups out there and, you know, you can find yours. Well, finally, it got to, I think, a point. I don't know if it's the fact that it's going to be a new decade. And so then there's a new era. But what we've decided to do is the live event that I've been hosting for a number of years now, which has been the Rock Your Mojo Women's Weekend, that has come to a close. So the new exciting stuff is the fact that, you know, it's time for all of us to consciously and actively be rocking our mojo.
Yeah. So you've created a business, you've created V-Day, which had a chance to be a part of the most recent one. You have a jewelry line that you launched. I mean, you're a best-selling author. You've got all these things. How do you keep all of that connected?
Well, all of it really falls under the umbrella of mojo. Now, let me be really clear though. Like, I did not create V-Day. Eve Ensler, who wrote the Vagina Monologues, she created V-Day along, you know, with countless women and men around the world. And for those of you who are new to V-Day, V-Day is a global organization that is working towards ending violence against women and girls. And it's really, at this point, just ending violence, period, and sexual assault and rape. And that's part of my history, which is also why I'm so passionate about the cause. So,
but you produce a an incredible event.
Thank you.
The Santa Monica event that's on V-Day is just unbelievable to have. There were 1,000 people, close to 1,000 people.
I think we were 800 or so, but yeah,
Oh,
who's
only
counting?
800.
Who's counting? Yeah.
That's a heck of a big event. You had, used your connections in the entertainment industry to just bring some phenomenal women together to produce that event.
It's a great opportunity to use a platform to create raising awareness, to obviously create funds for a wonderful organization, and to create change. That event has always had people walking away thinking differently, speaking differently to one another and to themselves, and really being more of a voice for something that consistently needs a voice, unfortunately. I think also it's a testament to show what's possible when you really know why you're doing what the hell you're doing, right? And we hear that a lot, especially I think in our entrepreneurial circles.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why are you doing what you do? I mean, you could do so many different things in the world. And by the way, being an entrepreneur and working for yourself and, or being a CEO, it's like, it ain't easy. Do you know what I mean? There are easier things that could be done.
I'm sad to hear that you experienced, abuse in your past. Could you share a little bit about that journey from being able to overcome?
I'm not unique, unfortunately, in this situation. And that's, that to me is the thing that really still pains me, not actually what happened in my life. I've really healed from what happened in my life. For 8 years, I lived in a home of domestic violence. It was my mom's second husband. And, and so what happened there, right? We talked about the volume dial of mojo going down. That was a place where I learned, hey, home's not a safe space. It's not okay to be a woman. You're not safe in your own body. You're just there to be, abused and to be basically abused. And, so there was that. And then, I got away from that home because we're all resourceful. And when you, especially like you really look at little kids, like entrepreneurs should definitely hang out with little kids because little kids are super freaking resourceful. And the fact of the matter is we don't actually lose again that resource, that resourcefulness. We start to get caught up in our heads and we think that there are no resources and we forget how unbelievably resourceful we are. I say that because even as a young teen, I was incredibly resourceful and got the hell out of that house. I discovered something called boarding school and figured out a way to get to boarding school so I could, live someplace else, which was beautiful. And ultimately 1 year after being at boarding school, my mom realized how bad it was because I was mostly the buffer. And so she ended up leaving, which was great. However, at boarding school, that at the end of that first year, freshman year, a local person from the town broke into my dorm and raped me. And that was the first time, that was my first sexual experience. So it was kind of like, it kind of punctuated the fact that, not safe, right, to be in my own body. And at that time, this was back in the 80s, there were really no resources. Mm-hmm. Nobody was really talking about this stuff. Again, I became super resourceful and found like some local clinics because it was also, right at the height of all the AIDS scare and all these epidemics,
But it must have been terrifying.
It was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I couldn't tell anybody because, if anybody found out that somebody was in my dorm, then I would have been kicked out of school. And at that point, right, if I was kicked out of school, where was I going? It was a very, traumatic time in my life. And for quite a while, there were no tools. There was survival and numbing out. That's what there was. But when I ended up going to film school in college, and so one of my first films, we were told to sort of make a short film and offer a narrative that would go with it. So it was a voiceover. And I don't know why, honestly, I can't tell you, it was, X, Y, and Z that led to making of this particular film. Yet that assignment, all I knew was I'm making a film about, the experience of being raped. It was more of a poetic, metaphorical film rather than recreating the scene, so to speak.
But it was still just addressing that topic at that time was that very controversial within school?
Well, no, I mean, you're in film school, so there's all sorts of things that are happening in film school, lots of very artistic and, all those types of things. But no, but for me, it was the first time I broke my silence.
Wow.
And ever since I made that film and broke my silence, because my family didn't know, my friends didn't know, nobody knew. And I haven't shut up about it since. And frankly, one of the worst things that happens is when people go through trauma or assault, they keep it to themselves, because that festers and that becomes toxic in your own body, in your own mind. And you believe that you're worthless, and you believe that, there's, nothing's really possible for you. And there's all sorts of behaviors and destructive behaviors that will come from that. But when you break your silence, then there's the shame, it begins to dissipate. And the more you talk about it, the less shame there is. And the more you talk about it, all of a sudden you realize, okay, that happened. That was an experience, but it does not define me. That led me on a journey to a lot of really what I do now, of course, and it opened up the whole world of metaphysical arts and metaphysical healing, and so much of the women's empowerment work that I do. But you see that one of the things that is little talked about when people go through abuse and assault is what's called disassociation. Okay. And that's when you disassociate from your body. And it's smart at the time because there's trauma happening, and so you disassociate. Like, you actually, there's a sense, you'll hear people talk about a sense of leaving the body, and it's a defense mechanism, of course, and it makes sense in the moment. 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 15, 20 years down the road, it doesn't make sense anymore. We have to get everybody back in their bodies. I mean, our world is traumatized.
Yeah.
It's really, really traumatized. And so with the mojo and getting back in touch and reconnected with your life force, this gets you back in your body. This gets you connected to what is truly yours. This gets you connected to a feeling of confidence and power and delight and joy and energy and, excitement and enthusiasm. And that is one of the best antidotes to, people who have gone through any type of abuse in their life. Because once you can get so good, so good in your own skin, everything's possible.
Over the years, the life's failures, disappointments, things that didn't turn out right, do people tend to begin to disassociate as well and turn that volume down if they don't have the tools and take the effort to work on that?
Oh, sure. I mean, this is the choice about, buying into being, a victim or creating your life. We have choice in every moment, in every day. There were many years that I was living out of my victim mentality. It didn't really get me places that I enjoyed. But again, it's really about choosing your experience in life. And a lot of people in our society, and certainly the way that we have been raised as a culture, just pulls for people to be victims. It doesn't pull for people to rise above and really artfully and powerfully create their lives. Everybody has something that gives them a little oh, that might be fun, right? And then immediately there's the thought after that, oh, I don't think that could happen. Right. And look, most people
I've never experienced that myself.
Right. I didn't do that for many years in my life. Hello. Right. And so it's, again, I go back to, I think, the real basics. It's what is that next available step? There's something that is always kind of that again, it's the mojo, but it's constantly moving us and evolving us. And it's allowing yourself to be brave enough to take a step towards that. The J of mojo is what I call joining with all the different roles that we play. Okay. Because we all play so many different roles in life, right? Like, you're a CEO, you're, a partner to someone, right? You've got friends, you've got, so it's you have all these different roles that you play in life. So do I. And the fact of the matter is, we all have this one particular role that I call the heckler. I also have another name for it. I call it the itty bitty committee. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say things like that on this show. So
Sorry, this is a PG-13 show. You can say that.
Oh, I can?
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I also call it the itty bitty shitty committee. All right.
I caught myself doing that once where, it's just like something's running in the back of my head and I'm listening to it. And it's like, wow, and I looked up and I could see my reflection I was sitting near a window looking outside. And I could see my reflection when I was literally starting to slump over in the chair. And I thought, wow, what an effect that itty bitty shitty, not that I had this phrase at the time, but that itty bitty shitty committee can literally push us down physically.
So when I start to take it too seriously, this is my new mantra. Am I going to be thinking about this on my deathbed?
Oh,
that's it.
Wow.
So that's all I need to say to myself.
Yeah.
And then I go, oh, for, F's sake. And I said, yeah, no, not going to be worrying about this one on my deathbed. And if I am, then something's gone terribly awry.
Yeah. You know what? 100 years from now, nobody's going to know or care. So.
Well, and I love that because that's also like part of that adventurous spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, look, you ride a motorcycle. I finally learned, I had sworn I was going to learn to ride a motorcycle, and then I finally did.
Woo-hoo.
And
congratulations.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you. And, it's like humans are just interesting, right? We label these things like, that's not for me, or, oh, I couldn't, or how would that be possible? Or like take tango lessons, like I have too much to do at work. I have, PowerPoints to create. It's like, go take the freaking tango lesson.
What would they think at work if someone saw me? I heard a lot of that in when you were defining, hey, setting the table for us. So here's what Mojo means. Mm-hmm. Right? It's really at its essence. It's a big part of the essence of Mojo as you've described it.
Yeah. And, we all have it. And of course, the way that it gets animated, the way that it gets expressed is unique in all of us. Mm-hmm. Because we are all here with a unique purpose, a unique imprint that we're making on this planet. And, and some people think that has to be, this huge company, or this has to be this huge mission. How about starting within your own home?
If we were having this conversation, say 20 years from now,
okay,
and you looked back across that time, what would have to have happened over those years for you to be able to say, you know what? Exceeded my wildest dreams?
True, powerful personal development is actually part of the way that everybody is brought up. So it's like, it's in schools, it's in, curriculum. It's, it's not like this extra thing that you do on the side. That to me would just be a big wow. So to me, like that's the legacy of that I would love to leave, right? Is that this really does live on generationally. And so that super excites me.
How can we continue to stay part of your conversation going forward? You have a lot rolling out.
I do. And, obviously the website, Deborah-Kagan.com is, Mojo Central. I'm also very, very active though on the gram. So Instagram is definitely a way to stay in touch with me, Deborah Kagan, and also on Facebook, Mojo Recovery Specialist, which you can also find by looking up Deborah Kagan. Those are the two other places that stay very active and will always have the latest and greatest.
Fantastic. Deborah, thank you so much. I've been watching the clock. I want to be respectful of your time. I know we had we were able to shoehorn an interview in real quick in Deborah's hectic schedule. And it's always a pleasure. Thank you for being with us today.
I appreciate you being here and for having me on. Thanks.
Our next guest is an award-winning entrepreneur. She's been acknowledged by eWomen Network as an emerging leader. She has also been acknowledged as one of the 40 under 40 that you need to watch. Please welcome for part 2 of her interview, Sarah Buxbaum, creator of Celebrate with Sarah and Celebrate with Sarah Hospitality.
Here you are 4 years later. You've got Celebrate with Sarah moving along at a great clip. You've been receiving awards like the one that you're up with eWomen Network.
Uh-huh.
You were named as 40 under 40 by your local Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
So you have an award-winning business, plus now you've started others.
Yes. But things can happen very quickly. I mean, I haven't been doing this for barely 4 years. and I've totally transformed my business, like
Mhm.
in more ways that I could have even thought of. I thought I was so far in the negative, emotionally, financially, everything. And I was so mad that I now had to face everyone who told me not to leave the hotel
Mhm.
and not to go down this path of being an entrepreneur, that they were all right. I made a really bad mistake.
Was there specific event or
Yes.
time that
So,
really drove that transition?
well, eWomen Network, they found me and offered me this award for being an emerging leader in my community and a, business person and all this stuff. And I was like, sure, I've never heard of these people. What the heck? So I ended up, kind of going along for that journey, which was amazing. eWomen Network has been so amazing to me. Get to go to Dallas, meet all these people. It was a whole scholarship. Basically, they paid for me for a whole year to go attend these events, and they flew me to Dallas, and I'm on the beautiful stage with Sandra Yancey. And it was then when I realized, and I wasn't ready to let anybody in, but I realized I was hurting myself by not letting people help me.
Wow.
And so then the end of that conference, it made me not want to work with anybody. And it was a huge time, thing, because I built this business and I didn't want anyone to give me advice. I trusted nobody. I mean, literally, you feel like the rug's pulled underneath, times 10. And when I realized that I'm actually hurting myself by not allowing the good people to be part of my journey, that was a big transformation for me. One of the speakers was Craig Duswalt, which is how we know each other.
Yes.
And I had known him. I'd seen him before. I knew a lot of people who worked with him. And I was like, I'm not signing up for anything. I finally have money in my bank account and I'm not giving it to anybody. And that was literally how I went about things. All these opportunities are getting thrown at me. Oh, I'll help you get from here to here if you pay me. I'll do this. And I'm like, no one's doing anything.
If I were in your shoes, I would be looking at that and saying, yeah, I've seen this movie already. No thanks.
Yep. And which is so funny because he lives 10 minutes from me, but I ended up agreeing to work with him in Texas. And so I go to his boot camp, and where I started getting connected to a lot of people who are real people who I still wasn't like, oh, I'm going to start paying everyone to help me. But I kind of like started shifting my thinking. It was the best decision I made at the point.
Sure. But then to have the opportunity to spend time around strong, collaborative heart for helping other people, leaders like Craig Duswalt, like Sandra Yancey, founder of eWomen Network. For when you're watching this, if you don't know about Sandra or Craig, you need to look them up.
When you hire someone or anything that you do with your business, the people that you want in your circle, it's not about the success of their business or anything else. It really is making sure your values align.
Mm-hmm.
And not to get swayed by dollar signs and all the fancy stuff, because if they didn't get that by doing things that the way you would have done it, it's not going to work. And I can attest to that. And that wasn't something that I thought about.
Back to what you mentioned with your experiences earlier, like when you left one hotel to work for another and found, now this doesn't fit right.
Mm-hmm. Once you really open the door to the right people like Craig and Sandra, and once I fully embraced everything that Sandra built and that was literally dropped in front of me, she's what led me to Craig, which led me to you, which led me to all these people. I can't speak about it enough how important it is, but I'm so lucky that I learned that when I was so young.
A restaurateur that I had interviewed, he told the story of how he always asks all the managers, what business are we in? And a lot of times they give the wrong answer. They go, we're in the food and beverage business. He's like, no, we're in the people business. We just happen to sell food and beverage.
Exactly. People are like, how did you go from dessert to this? And I'm like, it's the same thing. At the end of the day, it's all about creating something for people. Everything to me is the hospitality. I'm trying to change. When people hear the word hospitality, it's not hotels. It's your personality. How are you showing up to the world? and how you treat people and that feeling you give them. And
Wow. Yeah.
that it's just like, you can do anything once you know what your personality, what your brand is, who you are. And once you get clarity on that, I mean, I could see why people are confused. Cupcake, a house in Nashville, you don't live there, now there's a foundation in South Africa, and so a lot of people, it's very confusing, but to me, it's so clear. It's all about people.
All about people and the experience that you create for them.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what the actual physical thing is. And that's when I kind of realized I was onto something, because a lot of people didn't realize that.
For entrepreneurs, you become kind of a bipolar distance, because they're doing this and then we're doing that. And next shiny thing. I guess ADHD would be a better way to put it.
Yes.
What's the next thing? It's distracting, and not being able to maintain a vision of, look, here's the thing that ties it all together. So they're really, you're truly doing one thing. That's how you see it. And everything has to be consistent with that. It has to fit in the values around that.
Yeah. And a lot of the times, with this, I've learned way more than I ever thought I would learn when I decided to create the second business under my umbrella. And I didn't realize how confusing it would be to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that probably 95% of the people I know think I'm nuts, because they think it's so different.
So you've got $6 in your pocket, lots of debt, and you start a business that leads you to doing work for the Backstreet Boys. What was that journey from there?
Yeah, the day that I paid for my business license, there was $6 left. And with my background in corporate, I didn't want to just be someone who was making cupcakes, just this one-off thing, or I didn't really know what to do.
Why cupcakes? How did you start there?
So I've always kind of baked for fun. About 12 years ago, I was diagnosed with celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease in your small intestine. And you have to eat gluten-free, and there's some dietary restrictions. And so that's kind of when I started learning a lot about food and becoming interested in things like that. And I've always had a sweet tooth, and it was something I could never really find at the time. I mean, 12 years ago, no one knew what gluten-free was.
That's a good point. That's something that's become very popular very relatively quickly.
Yeah. And a lot of people have, developed problems and stuff. And so I was kind of doing it for fun. And I always liked baking. I mean, my best friend, I did her bridal shower. I've always loved parties and fun celebrations and dressing up and things like that. And so I did her bridal shower. I did a bunch of cupcakes for her. It was just something I knew how to do. And this was years ago. And everyone was like, you should do this for a job. And I'm like, no, I want to change the world. I don't want to make cupcakes. And I didn't really see the connection at the time. And my mom's best friend was throwing a party, a baby shower. And she said, I want to hire you to make cupcakes. And I said, I'm not allowed to. I don't have a licensed kitchen. I mean, you have to remember, I was working with the health department in San Diego and doing all the inspections. I knew I wasn't allowed to just make something and sell it.
Sure.
And I wanted it to be done the right way. So I went to the health department and I asked them, I literally just drove down there. I said, what do I need to do to be able to sell cupcakes and make some extra money? And they told me about this.
Were they a bit surprised?
Yeah. Yeah, they were. What do you do now? And I was like, well, nothing, I guess. Cry. That was my full-time job. And so the day I had to get all my paperwork, I needed to come up with a name, and I didn't want to, there was nothing that I loved. And so I'm like, well, I mean, I guess I'm making cupcakes. So I called it Custom Cupcakes by Sarah, and I hated it. I literally hated it from the day I wrote it. So I'm like signing the papers. I'm at the court, signing all that. And I go, how long am I stuck with this name? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, how long do I have to commit to this? And they're like, oh, just a year, it wasn't a big deal. But I knew in my gut that it was not, I wasn't put on the planet to make cupcakes. And I really strongly believe that. I started selling cupcakes one-off here and there. I was branding them for real estate agents because my background in hotels, I knew that these companies were coming in and it was all about branding. they wanted their name to stand out. These financial companies and real estate, Keller Williams and all these people. So I swore I wouldn't get into the wedding industry, and which I love doing now. And I was going to go after corporate clients.
Where were you baking all of these cupcakes?
So I got my parents' kitchen certified. So I got licensed we had to make a few minor changes. My dad, built the house, so he knew how to build it the right way to pass, everything they were looking for, certain plumbing rules and things like that. They were shocked that I got my paperwork right the first time, because this law was passed that people could bake from their house during the recession when people needed more money.
I'm curious, how did that lead to baking for the Backstreet Boys?
And this is another reason why you never know where you're going to meet somebody. I was helping my friend who owned a restaurant, and I was bussing tables for him on a busy night, just helping. I wasn't getting paid. And I met this family, and now, I'm very good friends with them, but he connected me to somebody at iHeartRadio, and they reached out to me and they put me in as, what's it called? I was on like the end of the red carpet in the gifting suite. So when all the celebrities walked their red carpet, or I think it was the yellow carpet, that's what Kiss FM is, the carpet, I was the first one. They placed me, so I had this big display of cupcakes. So I got all these, and I'm like, oh my God, if only these people knew what was really going on in my life. And yeah,
too often people will let that keep them from moving forward like you did, taking advantage of an opportunity like that in the midst of a lot of stuff happening in life, when it's hitting the fan.
But the funniest thing is when I met Marshall and Joanna, based on how I was feeling about not trusting anybody, I was like, oh, I'm never going to see these people again.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't expect that people actually were going to put good opportunities in front of me. And I just never really counted on anyone else, like I said, to kind of validate what I was doing. It ended up, I just love them to death, and I do events at their brewery, and I became really good friends. His daughter, turns out, has a similar background as I do, same age as me, in hotels, and it was just like it was a really cool experience to, once you start putting yourself out there, and because I did realize you can't just cry about it, you have to go, make it, and I had to make it happen. I had all these bills to pay. I had to sell cupcakes.
Then leads to being at the front of the line on the yellow carpet. And
I got to meet all these NFL players, and, it was, This Is Us, the whole cast was there, and I was hanging out with all these, but that, as cool as it was, did not financially really turn into anything. It was a really cool thing.
Yeah.
But I knew, I'm like, this isn't going to be your big break. You got to keep doing this. It just kind of gave me like a taste of what all the opportunities that could come if I just start, not shutting down everything. And
wow,
it was really cool. Those pictures make me so happy, because it was, like I said, I think it was the day after something, that it was that I was at Wango Tango. That was the event it was at. And then having to go and do a deposition and face these people who just really messed my life up. But things can happen very quickly. I haven't been doing this for barely 4 years.
I want to ask you this. What would you say to other young leaders that are considering breaking out to do something? They've got a vision for something that they want to do, a dream they want to chase. They're hesitating, or, they're getting some of the same kind of feedback that you got. It's like, well, you're only fill in the blank, however old.
I have a lot of things to say. I think you have to be very focused, and at some point not listen to what everyone else is telling you. But with that, do research, and know you don't know what you don't know. And don't just think one step ahead. Try to think a few steps ahead, because, or if you don't want to do that, be prepared to have a lot of falls. I think people get this dream and they get this like passion, but they don't really know how they're going to execute it. And I didn't either. And I figured it out. I think you can figure it out, but you have to either be focused. I think if someone's handing you a bunch of money, then, you know, I don't think that does you any favors. And really learning every angle of what you're doing, because I was like, cupcakes, what, how am I supposed to do that? I just went door to door. Like, I didn't really know what to do. And then you have to get clear on, okay, if I have this many bills to pay this month, you know, hopefully people aren't in the same situation as I was, where it was kind of like, if you don't make money, your insurance is getting shut off and you won't have a cell phone anymore and your car will get repossessed. Hopefully they don't have that kind of fire under them. But honestly, I think you need something. I mean, and I, no pun intended, don't want to sugarcoat anything. It's a
good pun, though. Go ahead.
It is good. But it's not easy. Yeah. There's no part about anything about running a business that's easy. Anyone who thinks that they just have a great idea and they just know exactly what they're going to do, you're going to run into things. And whether you know it or you don't, it's going to happen eventually. Always know that there's more. I think that's probably my big piece of advice, is there's so much more than what meets the eye. Good luck to anyone who's coming on this journey.
Well, and to find other people like yourself to surround themselves with that are on the journey as well.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I literally, as hard as it is, feel like, how am I getting paid to have this life? Mm-hmm. And even on the days that it's like, I'm so tired, I don't want to do this today, or I don't want to post a thing on social media, or, you know, the other million things that you don't want to do when you're running a business.
Sarah, that is a fantastic perspective, I think, to wrap up with. Appreciate you being here today and sharing with us. It's just amazing to go from $6 in your pocket to launching Celebrate with Sarah as a dessert service. Now you're starting to build houses. You have your nonprofit. You're active in Africa. So you're international, changing people's lives on an international scale. Congratulations. And thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, it's once you build something that you can grow into, mm-hmm. you can do anything with it.
Yeah. At that point, I could. At CEOs. Okay, what do I do next? Whatever. Oh, we're on camera. Let's start now.